What's going on, guys? Tyler here from T-Rod Outdoors, and today we're going to be talking tackle. This is going to be probably a 15 to 18 week series. About every Tuesday we're going to go with Tackle Tuesday. We're going to go through a different style of tackle for each Tuesday, get you guys some tips and tricks. So we're going to start with terminal tackle. So got my terminal tackle box right here, and we're going to go through it. To me, for bass fishing, I would say there's seven or eight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. There's 7 hooks that every bass fisherman should have on hand at any point in time. So I guess to start, we'll go with a rundown of all of them, all of the hooks, and then we'll get into when to use which one and when I like to use them. So to start, let's go with a classic worm hook, straight shank worm hook. This one is a 4/0 straight shank worm hook. Well, this will be hook number 1. Hook style 1. There's different sizes, like I have in my box 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0 for a straight shank worm hook. So they're just different gauges of wire for what the aught stands for. So we got a straight shank worm hook. As you can see, it's straight from the tip of the hook to the eye. It's a straight line. Next style of hook is going to be an extra wide gap hook. And if you can see, the gap in between the shank of the hook and the point of the hook is wide. That's why it's called an extra wide gap hook. Compared to something like this, where you can see, if I line up the hook points, you can see that wide gap hook has more of a curve to it. So, and we'll go over when to use a straight shank worm hook and when to use an extra wide gap here in just a couple minutes. Just give an overview of all the hooks. Next one, moving on, this I have a new pack of Mustad hooks here. This is going to be a soft plastic frog hook. So you screw your soft plastic frog into the swivel keeper and then hook it onto the double hook back there. So that's nice for when you're throwing soft plastic frogs or toads. Still get the double hook up ratio. Moving on from that one, we'll go with a swim bait hook. And swim bait hook is kind of like the frog hook, as it has a swivel up here, like a screw lock keeper, I believe it's called. And then this one's a weighted swim bait hook. So you would screw your swim bait in and then hook it. But we'll go over how to rig it when that time comes. So that's 4 so far. Number 5, I'm going to go with a Ned rig hook. Probably an underused in my tackle box because I don't really fish a lot of Ned rigs. But I'm going to push myself to try it and start now that I'm fishing the river. A lot of smallmouth, and smallmouth love a Ned rig. So we'll get on from that one. Hook number 6 that we're going to talk about is a shaky head hook. So shaky head hook is kind of like a bigger version of the Ned rig. Ned rig, you're throwing smaller baits. Shaky head is for worms, and you can pretty much use shaky head for anything. I normally use it for worms. So we have the shaky head. Okay, and now our last style of hook is going to be a finesse hook. Just a small hook. This is good for wacky rig as well as drop shots. It's just a tiny circle hook. Okay, so now that we've talked about the hooks, let's close this back up, and let's talk about when to use straight shank worm hook. It's more or less in the name, straight shank worm hook, use a worm. So we have a worm here. This is a Zoom finesse worm. So how you thread it on there, put it down from the top, go down about, 1/8 of an inch, come out. You want to thread it up, slide it over the hook keeper right there, and then you just want to line it up, push it through. And there you go, just like that. Straight shank worm hook is all rigged up. Okay, now the difference of when I would throw an extra wide gap hook compared to a regular worm hook is when I'm throwing a thicker style bait. Like this is a pit boss right here. This is just a box of all old plastics from out on the boat, just worn out plastics. So got the pit boss here. So what you're gonna see, if I rig it up same exact way that I just did the trick worm, the Zoom trick worm, rig up the pit boss here. So what this extra wide gap does is when you have a thicker body bait, like a pit boss or any type of flipping style bait, there's more of a gap down in here for the bait to push out of the way when that fish bites it, to then expose the hook point so you don't miss so many hookup ratios. Like on a worm hook, there's still plenty of space for that worm to get out of the way. Okay, but if I were to rig the pit boss onto a straight shank worm hook, there's not a ton of room there for the bait to get out of the way so that you can set the hook into that fish. See, there's just barely any room between the bottom of the pit boss and the hook. So you're only getting a little bit of that hook exposed compared to the extra wide gap. There was more hook. So you're gonna miss less fish when you're flipping thicker baits. So I know there's probably a different answer to that, but that's what I go for and it works for me. So that's what I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing. So moving on from that, we just talked about the straight shank worm hook, 4/0, and we just talked about an extra wide gap hook. And this one was a 3/0. So moving on from that, we will move on to the frog hook. So has a screw-in, screw-lock keeper. Let's see if I have a toad in here. Yeah, I do. Ooh, have a garlic toad. It stinks. So what you want to do with this one, you just want to push the screw lock keeper in. This is an old one, so it's already ripped up, which doesn't make it easier. Okay, just screw it in like that. That way it's freely there on the screw lock. Then what you do, you just line it up, thread it on like that. There you go, there's your frog hook, soft plastic frog hook. And then what's going to happen, you're going to be working it along, bass going to come, push that plastic out of the way, and there's plenty of hooks available to go into that bass, so you don't lose so many. This one's probably not as important if you're just starting out. If you had to only carry 3 hooks with you, my preference, I would go extra wide gap because you can still throw a worm on it. You can throw anything on an extra wide gap. I would go a finesse hook so you can wacky rig if the bite is tough. And I would go with a swim bait hook because you can't go wrong throwing a swim bait, weighted or weightless. Moving on from that, we've got the frog hook done. Next, we're going to go to, since I was just talking about it, let's go to a swim bait hook. So swim bait has similar style screw lock keeper. Let me see if I have a old swim bait in here. This one's missing a tail, but you get the picture. So same thing that we did with the frog. Just going to screw the top of it. into the screw lock keeper. So, that way it's freely there. Now what we're going to do is push it through the plastic. And then there you go. Your swim bait's all rigged up. Like I said, this one's missing its paddle tail, but it's weighted, so you don't have to put any weight. You just tie your line right there, and you're good to go. This one's very simple. You just cast and reel it in. Alright, up next for hooks, we'll go shaky head. Now, me personally, I like to throw a trick worm or a curly-tailed worm on a shaky head. You can throw just about any bait you want, but it's just what I like to throw, it's what I'm comfortable with. So a shaky head worm, if you can see over here, it has these prongs that come out. Now what those do is when it's on the bottom, it keeps the bait standing the way you want it. So here's a Mondo worm. So I'll thread that one on there so you guys can see it. Alright, so we got the Mondo worm on a shaky head. And what's this going to do is when that's standing on the bottom like that, this tail is going to be floating up like this. And that bass is just going to take it all. And then you set the hook and you got yourself a fish. So I like to throw big worms on shaky heads. It's just what I'm comfortable with. But like I said, you can put anything onto a shaky head. Up next, we have a finesse hook. Now, finesse hook is great for wacky rig. If you don't know what wacky rig is, take a stick bait, find the middle of it, push the hook through, just like that. You have an irresistible, oh, that's not in the middle. Let's try it right there. Irresistible to bass. It's worked for years. It's tried and true. When the going gets tough, toss a wacky rig, you'll be surprised. But that's probably the easiest thing to do with a finesse hook is wacky rig. And then the other way is going to be drop shot. Now drop shot can be a little intimidating to start with tying the right knots, but more or less drop shot, the hook's going to sit up here. There's going to be a weight down here on, say this is the bottom. What the hook's going to be up here, and then you're just going to nose hook a smaller soft plastic like this, and then it's just going to dangle there. They're going to come up irresistible. Okay, so the last style of hook that every bass fisherman should have is going to be a Ned rig. Now, I don't think that I have any Ned style baits in here. But I got a Senko, so I'll just trim it down. So more or less a Ned rig, it's just like this. Just a stick bait. Well, there's multiple different options, but most of them are just going to be like a stick bait, about 2 or 3 inches in length. And it's like the same thing with shaky head. You just want to rig it straight on there. Just like that. And then it's going to do the exact same thing as a shaky head. It's going to sit on the bottom like this. The tail's going to give it a little wiggle. Bass going to come eat it up. That is a Ned rig hook. So that's all for terminal tackle hook wise that I keep. There's still other hooks out there, I'm sure, but these 7 will get you started and then some. This is all I need for probably the rest of my life. Just these 7 hooks, I'll be set. So next we're going to move on to weights. So there's two styles of weights that I use in here. One of them being a bullet weight. And the other being a drop shot weight. Drop shot weight and a bullet weight. With a bullet weight, taking mono, say we're going to be throwing a worm. So what you want to do, you want to slide your bullet weight onto your main line first, and then you want to tie your favorite fishing knot. Okay, and then your bullet weight can slide freely on the main line unless you put a peg. You can't put a peg, which just causes the weight to stay right there, which works. I usually peg all my weights because I can't stand it when the weight is down there sliding around. I like it to be right by the bait. So that's the bullet weight. Now bullet weight comes in two different styles. You have lead and tungsten. Now, I use tungsten now. I used to use all lead because it's really cheap, easy to find. Tungsten for a while was hard to find, and it's a little bit more expensive. So here, what are these? These are a quarter ounce lead weight, bullet weight. Okay, see how big it is in my hand compared to this one is a quarter ounce tungsten. So tungsten is more dense, so there's less material there, but it's just as heavy. And as you can see, the lead weight is noticeably bigger compared to the tungsten weight. So it's just a smaller profile when you're throwing a tungsten weight. Okay, the last weight we're going to talk about is going to be a drop shot weight. So here it is right here. We'll go ahead and tie on a finesse hook so I can show you guys the drop shot. It's important when you're tying a drop shot that you leave a big tag end so that you have something to clip the weight to. Okay, now you see how the tag end is on top of the hook. You want to go ahead and run that back down through the eye. So that way when you cast, your bait is standing straight up. You have your main line up top, your tag end at the bottom. This is probably an 8-inch tag end. I like to keep it 8 to 12 inches for what I fish. And then these drop shot weights are extremely easy. You just thread your tag end through and you clip it up into it and the weight will clip down onto it. Just like that. Then your weight's on the bottom and your hook is up here off the bottom for your drop shot rig. Very simple. And then you don't have to tie it to the weight or anything. It's so that if the weight, since it's dragging on the bottom, if it snags, then it'll just pull out. You'll lose a weight, but you'll keep your hook and your bait and your line, and you just clip on another weight, and you're good to go. Now I think that is everything on this edition of Tackle Tuesday. So like I said, this was all about terminal tackle that I believe every bass angler should know and have on hand. I think next week we're going to do something with soft plastics. I think we're going to do worms. Definitely something with soft plastics. So thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys next time on another episode of T-Rod Outdoors, and stay tuned for next week's episode of Tackle Tuesday.